Now, the four horsemen of the apocalypse. Everyone knows they're mentioned in Revelation chapter 6. What's little known, little mentioned, is that they're mentioned in Zechariah chapter 6 as well. Mentioned as horses carrying chariots. But if you look at it very closely, they're the same. It's the same event. Mentioned in Zechariah. In Zechariah, it tells you the directions they're headed. There's one colour that's slightly different. There's a dappled horse instead of a pale horse, but all the others match up. So obviously the dappled horse is the pale horse, or the green horse in some Bibles. Now we'll describe how where they're headed, and I'll show that it's fulfilling at this very moment. Particularly out in Russia, at this very moment, the economy's in free fall. So that the black horse, I'll start with Russia. The black horse heads north. Russia's north. The black horse is of poverty and imbalances of money and justice. Now in Russia, there's more billionaires. There's many, many billionaires in Russia. There's many in poverty. And the country's becoming poorer and poorer. As a result of sanctions, it'll become even poorer. As a result of oil becoming cheaper, it's becoming poorer. That's another thing about the black horse. Preserve the oil and wine. They've been saying that, haven't they? They've been crying out, preserve the oil, preserve the wine. Look at Russia. It's rich in oil, rich in vodka's what their staple, isn't it? Forget wine, it's vodka. Wine represents alcohol. They drink vodka out there by the bucket load. There are more alcoholics in Russia than any other country, I believe. They've been saying, crying out from all corners of the globe, preserve the oil. Because it's got so cheap. They're trying to raise the price, but they're failing. It's still cheap. Even though it's gone up slightly, it's still cheap. They're still saying preserve it. Now the red horse of war goes east. Now we've seen that out in the east, Middle East all at war. We've had ISIS around the Great River Euphrates. We've had got Saudi Arabia and Yemen. Yemen at the brink of famine. There's all sorts of wars in the east. That's where the main wars are, in the east, in the Muslim countries in the east. Now the dappled horse in Zechariah goes south. This represents the pale horse, death followed by Hades. The green horse in some Bibles. The sword, famine, pestilence and plague. Now look at the south, look at the African countries. That's what they're suffering, isn't it? Pestilence, plague, famine. South Sudan is particularly badly affected by sword, famine, pestilence and the plague, by all of them. Now the other horse is the dangerous one, the worst horse of all. Go to those that live in relative comfort. Well, we in the West have got it worst of all. We think we're best of all, we've got it best of all. We got the worst horseman, the white horseman with a bow and a crown bent on conquering. The Antichrist King himself will appear in the West. He won't come from a Muslim country, he comes from the West. That's where the white horseman comes from, the West. Tells us in Zechariah. Now, interesting enough, he's got a bow, but he doesn't have any arrows. So take comfort, all you follow Jesus Christ, Yahushua. He's got a bow, but he hasn't got arrows, so he can't pierce the soul. All he does is work by fear. That's what a bow does, it induces fear. See someone on a horse with a bow, you fear, you're terrorised. You won't be able to see whether they got arrows or not from down below. But be reassured, he hasn't got arrows. So you can't pierce the soul. You have to pierce your own soul by surrendering to him. To his spirit. To the evil spirit. That's it, quite simple. When you look at Zechariah, it all becomes clear. It's all fulfilling at the moment. Out in Russia, the economy's in free fall. It's been suffering for ages. So all blessings in the name of Yahushua. Amen.